I am Eulis Rachmatiah Iskandar, founder and principal trainer of Ethiculture Training and Consultancy, which focuses on ethics and integrity and data privacy and human rights. I was head of ethics and privacy at Celcom Axiata Berhad until last year, and prior to joining Celcom, I was with the Corporate Governance and International Compliance Unit, Group Legal of Petronas. Before focusing on ethics and compliance, I had over 20 years working experience as General Counsel and Company Secretary for various public listed companies with a strong interest in corporate governance. The Ethics Standard Board is an independent body under MIA with the objective of promoting high quality and ethical professional accountants through adherence to professional and ethical standards that are benchmarked to international practices. My role as an ESB member is to support and promote compliance with the MIA bylaws or Code of Ethics to enhance the quality and consistency of service provided by professional accountants in Malaysia. My duties include reviewing updates to the standards, such as exposure drafts issued by ESBA, and seeking clarification and providing recommendations and guidance where necessary, particularly for localization. We also conduct training and communication on the code to members. Ultimately, the objective is to strengthen public confidence in the accountancy profession in Malaysia. Vagueness is the enemy of integrity. The Code of Ethics is the effort to provide clarity as to the required ethical conduct of professional accountants. It clearly sets out the do's and don'ts and even the approach and methodology to complying. Firstly, the Code sets out the requirement that a professional accountant shall comply with the fundamental principles. The fundamental principles are integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. The Code then goes on to explain each of the fundamental principles. For example, integrity. The Code explains that integrity means being straightforward and honest and involves fair dealing, truthfulness, and having the strength of character to act appropriately, even when facing pressure to do otherwise. It then proceeds to describe what acting appropriately involves, namely, standing one's ground when confronted with dilemmas and difficult situations, and challenging others as when appropriate in the circumstances. Secondly, the Code says that a professional accountant is required to apply the conceptual framework in complying with the fundamental principles. The Code also encourages a professional accountant facing an ethical conflict to consult others, which, however, does not relieve the accountant from his responsibility. Professional accountants are also encouraged to document any ethical issues with notes on discussions and decisions. It is the approach to be taken by professional accountants when faced with threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. The approach is, firstly, identify threats to compliance with fundamental principles. Secondly, evaluate the threats identified. And thirdly, address the threats by eliminating them or reducing to an acceptable standard. When applying the conceptual framework, the professional accountant shall have an inquiring mind, exercise professional judgment, and use the reasonable and informed third-party test. The professional accountant should also consider bias in the exercise of professional judgment when identifying, evaluating, and addressing threats. Briefly, the Code of Ethics tells us to take a step back and reconsider. Of course, the Code would not be able to address every scenario, hence professional accountants need to comply with the spirit of the Code as well as the letter. Comply, comply, comply. Professional accountants need to understand that they have a role in protecting public interest. The public sees the professional accountant as the gatekeeper and guardian. Loss of confidence in the accountancy fraternity can have huge repercussions. Just look at the Enron case, which resulted in the closure of one of the largest accountancy firms in the world, not to mention Enron itself. The Enron case led to the enactment of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which caused ripples around the world, including Malaysia. Professional accountants have an important role to play as the eyes and ears of the ordinary citizen and also as an example of ethical behavior. To build trust, professional accountants have no choice but to uphold the highest standards of integrity and ethical conduct. Hence, professional accountants must comply with the spirit and letter of the Code of Ethics. Compliance with the fundamental principles and application of the conceptual framework can only be effective when it is supported by an ethical organizational culture. In order to promote an ethical organizational culture, leaders of an organization must provide the right tone at the top. They must also provide ethics education and training. They should also provide reward for ethical behavior and ensure effective whistleblowing policies and administration. There should also be other policies and procedures to prevent non-compliance with laws and regulations. The right tone at the top means that leaders must promote the importance of ethical values, and most importantly, they need to walk the talk. A key success factor in developing an ethical culture is to have conversations about it at town halls, meetings, and every possible venue. Having the right policies and procedures means nothing if there is no enforcement. Hence, transparent and effective enforcement is also important. Another key success factor is having an effective whistleblowing channel where the identity of the whistleblower is protected and there is a clear policy on anti-retaliation. One of the ethical issues I came across was lack of independence of the head of internal audit, which led to issues being covered up. Lesson learned: personality and work history is important. For example, if the person was previously reporting to the CFO, he or she may not be able to assert himself on accounting issues. The position of head of internal audit is an important form of control, providing the necessary check and balance. Another ethical dilemma is whether to report or not to report an unethical conduct. In many companies and firms, employees fear reporting due to the negative repercussions. There were also times when whistleblowers were forced to resign due to retaliation. Lesson learned: companies need a whistleblowing channel that protects the identity of the whistleblower and prohibits retaliation against the whistleblower.